6, which is the powers of the mind. So, what are the powers of your mind? So, this is the brain power. So, when we say brain power, so it is our intellectual capacity or your mental ability. So, we have the complex organ that controls our thought and our movement. So, that wrinkled pinkish gray 3-pound organ that is primarily composed of fat and water and goes by the name of brain. So you got to this video because that jello-like mass tapping of your spinal cord fired electrical signals to your hand, telling it how to move. You got to this video because your brain stored information about using a computer and a definition of words that you learned years ago. You got to this video because your brain is working. So, as you age, so as a teenage years, so your brain is already a 3 pounds. So, it is 1.4 to 1.5 kilogram approximately. So, it is literally a box of liters of milk. So, that brain is composed of 70% water, 30% fat and protein, with a little bit of sugar and a little bit of salt. So it sounds like yummy, right? So it sounds like a food. So this makes the brain sound quite similar to pancakes, but the brain is much more useful for thinking. And as far as you imagine, it is far less delicious than pancakes. So gross, right? So ew, right? But that is reality. Next, number 1, we have the power to act. So when we say power to act, so there is a certain parts of your brain that is working. So we have the 3 major parts of your brain. So what are those? Number 1, we have the brain stem. So what is brain stem? So this is the one that connects the spinal cord and the brain. So it controls functions that keep people alive such as breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, and food digestion. So as you can see, ganun lang po ang itsura ni brainstem. Ayan lang siya. So that is the small part of the brain. So siya ang nagko-connect sa ating spinal cord and siya ang nag-hold ng brain natin. So it also controls our cardiovascular system, respiratory control, pain sensitivity control, alertness, awareness, and consciousness. So, kung mapapansin ninyo sa mga napapanood ninyong movie, anong nangyayari kapag pinapalo yung batok ng mga artista? Diba nawawalan sila ng malay? Diba? Kung mapapansin ninyo sa mga movie. So, it is because the brainstem, it controls the consciousness of our body. So, it controls the consciousness of the mind. Next is the cerebellum. So, things are different in the cerebellum. So, that region controls voluntary movement. When you want to lift your fork, wave your hand, brush your hair, or wink at a cutie, you form the thought, and then an area in the cerebellum translate your will into action. So, it is also involved in certain cognitive functions, such as language. So, how are you going to speak? So, it is because of the cerebellum. It receives information from the sensory system. That is why you can move. That is why you can lift the fork, you can wave your hand, you can brush your hair, or you can wink at your crushie, right? And lastly, we have the cerebrum. So, cerebrum, this is the largest of the 3 brain sections. So, as you can see, no, ito siya. Itong buong to, ito si cerebrum. So, this is the accounts for 85% of the brain's weight and has 4 lobes. So, later on, we will talk about what are those parts of the cerebrum. So, in general, the cerebrum controls all voluntary actions because it is the largest part of the brain. So, ito, di ba, nabanggit kanina, si cerebrum daw, meron siyang 4 lobes. So, ano ba yung mga 4 lobes? Meron tayong parietal lobe, frontal lobe, temporal lobe, and occipital lobe. So, nasali lang dito sa si brainstem and cerebellum. Pero yung 4 parts ng cerebrum, yun yung 4 na lobe. So number 1, we have the parietal lobe. So ito siya, si parietal lobe. So this is for the language and touch. Next is the occipital lobe. So sa back part ng ng head. So si occipital, this is for the sight. So kung mapapansin niyo kung sumasakit yung mga ninyo, sinasabi nila kapag masakit daw yung back part ng head natin, dahil daw yun sa mata. Tama? It is because the occipital lobe is considered as our it controls our sight. So it controls our eyes. Next is the frontal lobe. It's frontal lobe. So it controls the thinking, memory, behavior, and movement. And we have the temporal lobe. So this is for hearing, learning, and feelings. And ayun, ulitin lang natin si brainstem. So brainstem is for breathing, for heart rate, and temperature. Kaya nga po tayo conscious dahil kay brainstem. And we have the cerebellum. So this is for balance and coordination. Now let's talk about the neuron. So the neuron is the basic working unit of the brain. It is a specialized cell designed to transmit information to other nerve cell, muscle, or gland cells. So the brain is what it is because of the structural and functional properties of interconnected neurons. The mammalian brain contains between 100 million and 100 billion neurons depending on the species. So kanina napag-usapan natin, di ba? Merong specific part ng brain na nagsisend ng information. So, meron nagsisend ng information. That is because of the neurons. So, paano nagtransmit ng information? It is because of the neurons. So, basically, if the neurons or nerve cell breaks down, complications will arise. So, what are these complications? So, dito na nagsisimula yung pwede ka na ma-stroke. So, failures in brain functioning such as dementia, or yung mga nagkakaroon ng mga amnesia, di ba? Kasi nga, yung neurons yung nagtatransmit ng information to different parts of our body. So, it transmit information to different muscle, to different gland cells. So, kung hindi magpo-function si neuron, wala pong mangyayari sa body natin. So, basically, yung mga nai-stroke daw, it is because yung mga neurons nila namamatay or namatay. Let's just add a little trivia. So what happens to brain as we age? So let us just include your age as a teenager. So at this point, the brain reaches its adult weight of about 3 pounds. So it increased activity in the frontal lobes, allows a teenager to compare several concepts at once. So ang galing, 'di ba? Ang galing ni brain. So, sa age nyo daw na ngayon, ito na yung mga weight talaga ni brain mo. So, ito na yung nagfa-function na ng maigi si frontal lobe. So, ano ba si frontal lobe? Ano ba yung napag-usapan natin kanina about kay frontal lobe? So, it is consists of thinking and reasoning. Kaya nga, ang sabi niya dito, it is already increasing activity in frontal lobe. That's why you can already compare several concepts at once. So nakakapag-multitask na yung isip ninyo. We are already done to number 1, which is the power to act. So now let's move to the critical age. So what is the critical age? So there's a consensus among researchers that brain cells regenerate throughout life, said Doug Postels, a pediatric neurosurgeon in New Orleans, but that new growth happens very slowly after a certain age. That's why we are talking about what is the critical age. So the size of the brain doesn't increase much after 3. So after 3 years old, as per Postel. So it is during the first 3 years of life, the brain experiences most of its growth and development. So most of its potential in learning as well. So number 1, the brain parts are adaptable. Number 2, deprivation of intellectual stimulation occurs dramatically before age 3. So, ayun, makikita daw natin yung problem or magkakaroon ng problem kung nagkaroon ng brain damage when you are on that critical age. So, ayun nga daw, yung first 3 years ng life daw natin, doon na bubuo or doon na de-develop yung mga potential natin or yung mga parts ng brain natin, yung mga uses ng brain natin. So, doctors also emphasize protecting the organ or your brain from injury and chemical abuse on that specific age. So after that age as well, you need to still protect your brain from any injury or any chemical abuse. Ano ba yung mga chemical abuse? So pwedeng pumasok dito si alcoholism, pwedeng pumasok dito yung nicotine abuse, mga smokers, pwede rin pumasok dito yung drug abuse. They found out that at the age of 3, at least before 3, if you had any operations, your brain can still function or the portions of your brain will still develop to do the specific task. So, yung iba, yung mga doctor, if they already found out that there is a problem in the brain, bago daw mag 3 years old, dapat naooperahan na or meron nang ginagawa si doctor. Okay? Kasi nga daw, kung ganong age pa lang is naagapan na, may chance pa na mag-develop ulit ang brain. So, may chance pa na magawa pa yung mga specific task ng parts ng brain. So, ayun nga. That is why the first 3 years of our life, our brain experiences most of its growth and develop most of its potential for learning. So, ayun. That is the critical age. So you need to remember if you're having a kid with you, if you have nieces or if you have a younger brothers or sister, kindly protect them. Kindly protect them from any injury. Lalo na sa mga nasa ganitong edad. So they are more prone. Okay? So that is the critical age that we are talking about. Next, let's talk about the differences between right brain and left brain thinking. So, ano ba yung mga differences nito? So, may mga di ba, research na sabi nila mas nagfa-function daw si left brain or mas nagfa-function daw sa kanila si right brain. So, it depends in every person. Ano ba yung brain na nagfa-function sa kanila? Ano ba yung dominant sa brain nila? Okay? So, for the left brain, so they are the critical thinkers. They are able to express themselves using art, music, or dance. So, they gather information by feelings and intuition. So, when we say left brain, they are verbal, analytical, and orderly than the right brain. So, sometimes they are also called as digital brain. So, these are better at things like reading, writing, and computations. And the right brain, they are the creative thinkers. They collect information using logic and sense. They express themselves with concise words, numerical, and written formulas and technological systems. So, when we say right brain, they are visual and intuitive. So it is yung right brain daw, siya yung nagpo-function for us to recognize the faces. So sila yung nagpo-function for us to read the emotions and expressing emotions. Yung mga right brains daw, sila yung mas nakaka-appreciate ng color and sila yung mas nakakapag-create ng music. So as a teenager now, alam niyo na ba kung ano yung dominant na brain sa inyo? Okay, so you need to explore more about your brains. Remember, you can still grow your intelligence. So the more that you challenge your mind to learn, the more your brain grows. So ano ba yun? Ano ba yung ibig sabihin niya? So di ba kapag nagiging stagnant yung brain, so kapag hindi ginagamit yung brain, parang mas feeling mo, mas na siya, hindi siya na-exercise. So, feeling mo mas nakakalimutan mo yung mga bagay. Feeling mo mas wala kang natatandaan. Feeling mo, hindi ka natututo. it is because you're not practicing your brain. It is because you're not challenging your brain. So, habang na-challenge daw yung brain, habang yung mga ine-exercise daw natin yung brain natin, mas nagfa-function siya. So, mas nag-grow yung intelligence natin. The brain is more likely a muscle. So, it changes and gets stronger when you use it. So, ulitin, kailangan gamitin po natin si brain. Most people don't know that when they practice and learn new things, parts of their brain change and get larger a lot like muscles. Like muscles do when they exercise. So, ayun, di ba? Nakakatawang isipin na kapag daw ginagamit natin yung brains natin, kapag pinapractice yung brain, kapag challenge yung brain, mas nag-grow daw. Para lang siyang muscle na mas pinapalaki mo, mas binibuild mo. Di ba? So remember, you can grow your intelligence by using your brain, by challenging your brain, by practicing your brain, by exercising your brains. So let us all remember, as a teenager, you need to grow your brain. So how? Ulitin lang natin. You need to practice. Use your brains. Practice your brains into complex thinking. Challenge your brains into difficult tasks. Make use of it when you're under puzzled situations. And then, lastly, be a brain athlete and many more. So, ayun, you need to grow your brain. So, wag po nating stuck si brain, okay? So, we need to use them, we need to challenge it. Okay? So, as we challenge it, mas nagiging strong yung brains natin. Mas nagbi-build yung mga neurons. Mas dumadagdag yung mga neurons. Diba? So, that's a good thing to hear na yung brain daw pala is nakakapag-grow pa rin ng intelligence kahit na matanda na tayo. Okay? So, yun lang daw ang solution. You need to practice. You need to exercise your brain. So, that's it for our lesson. So, this is the powers of the mind. Remember, you need to use your brain. You need to practice your brain. You need to exercise your